Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 2 of Quattroporte, which is our review series for the sports and super saloons of Gran Turismo 6. Now, this particular vehicle, which is of course the Lotus Carlton, is quite notable and does stand out from the series, and the reason for that is because this car was really far ahead of its time, and the Carlton really started the trend of the mainstream super saloon, because there had been sports and super saloons before from companies like Mercedes, but it was the Lotus Carlton that really put these kind of vehicles on the map and made companies realise just what a potentially awesome market of vehicles this could be. So in other words, the Carlton did it before it was cool. But what does it have to offer now? Because obviously this car is a little bit long in the tooth when compared to many of the other super saloons that are on the game, and often vehicles, especially in such a competitive category as sports saloons, technology tends to get outdated quite quickly. And considering the healthy lineup of sports and super saloons on Gran Turismo, this car could potentially fall behind many of its newer and more technically advanced rivals. So how does it compare to those? Well, for pure on-paper specs, it stands up very well to the modern super saloons. It doesn't necessarily have class-leading specs, but they are more than enough to be competitive, at least on paper. Engine is a 3.6 litre turbocharged 764 horsepower motor, producing 670 pound-feet of torque, which is among the highest of super saloons in the game. And one of the most surprising things about the Carlton is actually its weight. Now, it is a pretty heavy car stock, but with the full weight loss package, it is a lot lighter than it looks, because the Carlton is quite a large car, larger than many of the other super saloons on the game. But it weighs in at 1,325 kilos, which is actually very respectable for a vehicle of its size, and especially of its age. Because when this car came out, very few companies were using things like advanced composites and lightweight manufacturing that many manufacturers are now, even in more mainstream models. So again, this car was very much ahead of its time. The power to weight ratio as well is very good on this car, 577 horsepower per tonne, which for a vehicle of its size is very respectable. And the PP is actually perfectly placed, I would say, for this car. It sits at a much lower PP than many of the other sports and super saloons, especially of similar power and performance. It sits at a maximum of 573 PP, which is significantly lower than many of the other super saloons. And it's actually a lot more competitive at that level than you'd think it would be. Now, it's possibly even more competitive at a lower PP, say 550 or 525, but it is more than fast enough to keep up with its rivals at the 573 PP level. Speaking of performance, what does it have to offer? Because super saloons typically have very impressive straight line performance, sometimes even better than sports cars. So what does this one have to offer? Well, in the game, top speed wise, you're looking around the 260 plus mile per hour region. That's without NOS or slipstream. So again, it's a very competitive car, and that top speed really does make it hugely competitive, even against the latest of super saloons that are on the game. The acceleration as well, though, is very, very good on the Carlton, and that is where many super saloons kind of fall. They have very good top-end performance, but they're kind of sluggish low-end. The Carlton is not. It's very fast throughout its entire performance range. But what about for handling? Because there's no point being a straight-line missile if you can't take a corner. Well, I have to say this car surprised me, because I knew it was going to be fun and I knew it was going to be mad. But I didn't expect it to be a particularly good track car. And it actually is. The handling is surprisingly controlled, surprisingly smooth, almost like a touring car, which perhaps isn't too surprising considering how many successful touring cars Vauxhall has had over the years. So handling wise, it's very smooth, very controlled, And despite the fact that it is a large car, the aforementioned weight does mean that it is still very competitive even on technical tracks. So overall I have to say the Carlton did surprise me by how good it is. And its price tag, although initially may sound high at just under 82,000 credits, is actually very reasonable and is no way near the most expensive of super saloons on the game, but is among the fastest of super saloons, so the value for money is very good on this car. So overall, it's a very good car, and I would recommend it to anyone who is a fan of sports and super saloons, and it can compete with the best of them. So that's it for this episode of Quattroporte. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.